Hi, I'm Matt Travis, Managing Director of Inzygo Environmental Consultants. We've got 6 offices across the UK. We're in Belfast, Manchester, Cambridge, Sheffield, Cardiff and Bristol. Today we're talking about the changes in the NPPF. There's a new consultation out at the moment. I'm going to talk about how that's impacting the renewables area. I've got 2 guests with me today. I've got Kenny Dhillon, who's a Director of Planning at Inzygo, and I've got David Hardy, who's a Barrister in Planning at CMS. Kenny, if you'd introduce yourself, please.
Hi, thank you very much, Matt. I'm Kenny Dhillon. I'm Director of Planning at Inzygo. I've been doing planning for the last 20 years, well over 20 years. Worked in renewable energy developments, residential and infrastructure developments as well, and have a balanced experience of working with the local authority and also in consultancy as well. So thank you, Matt.
Thank you, David. David?
So, hello, David Hardy. I'm duly qualified as a barrister and a solicitor, but I'm a partner in the planning and environmental team with CMS, and I'm one of 3 partners based in the Sheffield office.
Thank you. So, just talking around this sort of impact of renewables, and I'll come to you first, David. What are your initial views on this latest NPPF consultation with regard to renewables?
Well, I mean, my views are pretty well known, and LinkedIn's a good format for getting those out. Anybody who thought that Labour wasn't ready for government, I think got a shock, because they've come out of the blocks really fast, and this is a well-considered and early statement of intent. Very much to be welcomed, moving the dial, and I think Ed Miliband is demonstrating a proper conviction for renewables, which I've always known or thought him to have. What are the highlights? It is an unequivocal statement of support for all types of renewables and low carbon development, and I think that's the strap line. There's an indication that significant weight should be given to the contribution to renewable energy generation in the net zero future, which I think is really interesting. And then there is a focus on spatial planning for renewables, which is something I've been interested in for a while. So planning authorities are expected to identify spatially where renewable energy infrastructure should go. Can developers expect miracles? No. Is it a good start? Yes. Is there work to do? Yes. Is it an exciting time? Yes. That's my initial reaction.
I think it's going to be really interesting, one component of that around the spatial location of it, because the one thing renewables is spatial location tends to be around grid.
Yep.
And I think that's going to be something that's really interesting that often the public don't realise. I mean, I don't know what you think about that, Kenny. Is there any other areas of the NPPF that you think? I noticed that from our earlier podcast with Doug that the government clearly listened to you and they included some of the points you mentioned, so we're clearly on topic, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I think following on from you, Matt, and from you, David, I think it's great how they've sort of redefined renewable energy with regards to sort of green belt, and also have sort of shaken up the system, with regards to how planning authorities assess renewable energy developments within green belts, by sort of focusing on the significant benefits of renewable energy within the green belt, and also how it should perhaps not be considered to be inappropriate development as well. So I think it's extremely positive and it's much needed. So I'm sort of very happy, with the changes, and I think further on in this sort of presentation, this sort of talk we'll be discussing other changes as well. So yes.
So one of my other questions is, Kenny, are there any other changes you'd have liked to have seen in that consultation?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think sort of following on from that, I think the other changes that I would have quite liked to have seen would have been, I think, a sort of paragraph with regards to archaeology and sort of heritage, especially archaeology. I consider it to be a hot topic at this moment in time. I think we've got a number of renewable energy clients sort of across the country who are being faced with predetermination, sort of trial trenching, based on the academic whims, I will say, of the county archaeologist. I think, I do think more specific guidance has to be provided, by the government, and especially, in the NPPF with regards to when it's appropriate to actually ask for extensive on-site evaluation of archaeology or the potential of archaeology. And that's something that the government does need to sort of focus on, because a lot of schemes are being held up purely because of trial trenching.
Must make it very expensive as well.
It's expensive and it's very time consuming as well, because again there's only a sort of finite amount of resource within the sort of country sort of for qualified archaeologists to undertake trial trenching.
And what about you, David, on the same question? Is there any other changes you think that they could have made to benefit renewable industry?
Yes. I think in textual terms, one of the interesting things for me was that they've removed reference to the impact side of the planning balance. So previously, development consent should have followed if impacts are or can be made acceptable. Now that's gone, or will be going if the draft goes through in its current form. What they haven't done is replace that with anything on the impact side. So it's all about increasing weight on the need side. And I think it would have been useful to have kept that reference so people would know what the test and what the threshold was. I think the other thing is that there are a lot of factors which need to be dealt with which haven't been. Now, whether that you do that in the framework or not is a different question, but I'd just highlight aviation. So from doing onshore wind 10 years ago, both MOD and civil aviation interests, that has to be grappled with. Yeah. Aviation lighting, so if we're going to have larger turbines at 150 metres plus, we've got to know how we're going to deal with that. Size of turbines in the English landscape, if we're coming back with wind schemes 150 metres, the landscape hasn't changed, so perhaps some guidance about how we reconcile that. And again, in relation to wind, reinforcement of ETSU R97, we need to have a clear guidance about how you deal with operational noise. So should they have been in the NPPF? I think some of those things could have been, but we need to deal with all of them if we're going to see onshore wind coming back.
I think onshore wind is going to be really interesting because it does, to me, it does seem that was one of the things that we thought would be a real quick shift for Labour. And I think bringing that forward, there's a lot of clients I know that we've been talking to, Kenny, yes, yeah, who are really keen to bring that. And you've got some sites where, you know, wind might be more appropriate than solar. It might be more appropriate with wind with battery, or whether you co-join all three together. I think it gives you real diversity to be able to put the right sort of renewable development in the right location for landscape and for the area.